This is the Jabberjaw Podcast Network. Visit jabberjawmedia.com for more shows like this one.
Hey guys, what's going on? This is Chris from That One Time on Tour. I wanted to stop by and let you know about Rockabilia.com. It is your one-stop shop for all of your band merch with the largest selection of officially licensed music merchandise in the entire world. They have sent me so much cool stuff. I got Misfits stuff, Iron Maiden stuff, Metallica stuff, Converge. I lean a little bit more towards the heavy side, but they have what you want too. If you like Taylor Swift, I'm sure they've got some Taylor Swift stuff. So head on over to Rockabilia.com and at checkout, put in the promo code PCJabberjaw and you'll get 10% off. Check them out now, Rockabilia.com.
Hey, this is Dewey Halpus, host of the Peer Pleasure Podcast, part of the Jabberjaw Media Podcast Network. The Peer Pleasure Podcast is an arts and culture podcast. Join me as I discuss life and content with your favorite performers, artists, and creatives. From Fall Out Boy to Slayer, there's something for everyone. Listen and subscribe at jabberjawmedia.com.
Episode number 57 of That One Time on Tour is brought to you by the band Protagonist. Protagonist is a punk band formed in 1999 in Boca Raton, Florida. Protagonist has toured with the likes of Newfound Glory, Less Than Jake, and Red City Radio. Not only is the band working on new music, but they are also celebrating the 10-year anniversary of their album, The Chronicle. Sponsoring this episode seems fitting as The Chronicle was the flagship release of Paper and Plastic Records, which is owned by our guest, Vinnie Fiorello of Less Than Jake. For more information on the band, check out Instagram and Twitter at ProtagonistFL and on Facebook /Protagonist. You can also stream The Chronicle and all of their other releases on Spotify and Apple Music. Now here it is, Protagonist with Light the Fuse.
Season change. Hey, this is Vinnie from Less Than Jake, and you're listening to That One Time on Tour.
Run for the road, 'cause it's going on and on. We'll be driving through the darkest night until the break of dawn. We'll be heading for the cities, another show for us to play. To get back in the bank tomorrow, we'll do it all again.
Merch Table was founded by artists just like you. We've slept on floors, played for everyone and no one, broken up, gotten back together, and taken everything we learned along the way to build a group of people who put creativity first so you can play while we work. Visit merchtable.com to learn more about our merchandising and online store solutions.
Hey guys and girls, what's going on out there in podcast land? This is Chris Swinney. As always, I'm your host for That One Time on Tour. If this is your first time joining me, this is my podcast where I get to sit down and chat with someone in or around the entertainment industry. So thanks for joining if it's your first time, but if it's not your first time and you are a regular guest, thanks for coming back. It means a lot to me that you guys keep coming back week in and week out. So I'm going to keep trying to put out the good content for you, but let's get right into this. This is episode number 57. Sometimes I look back and I'm like, wow, man, 57 episodes. That's crazy. I can't wait to get to 100. I think that's going to be a big feat, you know, and when like a television show hits their 100th episode, they get excited because they're going to be rich because it goes into syndication after 100 episodes. So maybe there'll be like a syndicated podcast channel or something. I don't know. But thanks again for joining us. We're going to get into this. We got a lot of stuff to talk about today. I went to a concert last night. I went to see Hozier last night. I took my wife for her upcoming birthday. It was an early birthday present. And it was sold out, and I got the tickets on StubHub, and I thought they were going to be really shitty, but they were amazing seats. We were right in the orchestra pit. Like it was awesome. And I got to say, I wasn't like the biggest Hozier fan, but I knew a lot of his songs, and the dude killed it. Like it was really good. I would go see him again. And if you guys out there haven't heard Hozier, he sings that "Take Me to Church" and sings a bunch of other stuff that's really, really good. So check Hozier out. And I'm actually now considering, I'm trying to get a hold of his management team, get him on the podcast. I bet he's got some really cool stories. He's out of Ireland, and I haven't had anybody from Ireland on the show yet. So we'll see what happens with that. But we had an awesome time, and yeah, you guys should go check out Hozier if he comes to your area. It's a great show, and he's playing kind of mid-level theaters, like maybe 2,000 to 3,000 seats. It's not bad. It was very intimate and very cool. So, and plus, if you're in Indiana and you haven't been to the Egyptian Room at the old National Center, that place is killer, man. I've played there before, and I've seen a bunch of shows there over the years, but that is just, it's a wonderful, wonderful venue, and it sounds great as well. I saw the Descendants there in another room. They weren't in the Egyptian Room, but I saw them back last August when I had Stefan on the show. And yeah, it's probably one of my favorite venues around here in Indianapolis. It doesn't get a lot better than the Egyptian Room over there at the old National Center. So go check out Hozier if he comes to your area. But moving on, we're going to do our housekeeping, get that out of the way really quickly. We have sponsors for this show. You know, they help keep the lights on. And this week we have Permanence Tattoo Gallery. They're still on as a sponsor. My buddy Jacob Harrison, he was on an episode a while back. He owns that place. It's over in Anderson, downtown Anderson, Indiana on Meridian St. And if you guys are in this area, if you're in central Indiana, go to Permanence Tattoo Gallery and get tattooed. It's the best shop in the entire state, in my opinion. Maybe I haven't been to all the shops, but I love going over there, and Jacob's a good guy. And everybody they have working there is amazing as well. Any style that you want, they're honest. They give you a good deal. So you can check them out also online. All the social medias, it's just at Permanence Tattoo Gallery. I also have to tell you about Artist Flags. They're still on as a sponsor. They are amazing. If you have a band or a company or anything, you need backdrops or scrims or anything with your logo on it, you need to hit up artistflags.com. Cody over there will take care of you. He's a great dude. Or you can check him out on all the social media platforms. It's at Artist Flags. Now, you can also, if you want to help the show out, go on over to patreon.com. I talk about Patreon all the time. It's really cool. Go to patreon.com/TOTOT podcast. and you can become a patron of the show. And what does that mean? Well, it means that for $5 a month, you get to join this really cool exclusive club. You get bonus episodes. I put up like some music from my first band the other day that no one else can get, but you guys can get it. I do all kinds of cool stuff for the patrons, and it's going to get even better. We're talking about exclusive merch for the patrons. I'm going to be doing a big contest with a piece of music memorabilia that I own that I never thought I'd get rid of, but I'm going to give it away to one of the patrons. And I can't really talk about it right now. I got to make sure that everything's in place, but it's really, really cool. And one of our patrons could win it. I'm going to ship it to you. No problem. I'm just going to pick a name at random. So if you guys feel like you want to help the show, and you feel like there's quality in the content that I'm providing, head on over to patreon.com/TOTOT podcast, or you can just go to TOTOTpodcast.com and do a one-time donation. There's a little button on there. And, there's all kinds of stuff. There's the Amazon wish list. Buy me my dream microphone and you can be my best friend for life. But, that's it on the Patreon. If you feel like getting involved, head on over there and check it out. And one of the other cool things about being a patron is that I give the patrons priority for segments that we do on the show. We've been doing this segment lately, the top 5 list. And just like literally a half hour before I started recording this, Scott from Melbourne, Australia, one of our patrons, sent in a top 5 list, and he jumped the line. I had another top 5 list coming up, and I decided, nope, we got a patron did it, so Scott got on here. So Scott from Melbourne, Australia, he has the top 5 band names. I guess they're like top 5 band names that he likes, most creative names or names that just roll off the tongue. So at number 5, Scott has Propagandy. I'm not really sure how to say it. I've heard people say both. But yeah, of course, they're one of my favorite bands, but that is a really cool name. It's, Propaganda, Gandhi, the two together. It's a cool use of, the English language. So I agree with that. At number 4, Scott has the Dead Kennedys. When I was young and I first saw someone had a shirt, the Dead Kennedys, I didn't understand the implications of what they were doing. And then I saw the album cover or the shirt or whatever that had like JFK getting shot. And I'm like, oh, the Dead Kennedys. Okay. I totally get it now. And a little side note on that, my father, when I was young, it was really, really cool because when I was getting into like metal and punk rock, he was into it as well. One of his favorite bands was Pennywise, and he would go into Karma Records here in Muncie, Indiana. And if they were playing like Slayer or something, he would buy the CD they were playing because he thought it was cool. Like my dad loved a lot of crazy music for being an older guy. And, my dad, I was wearing a Dead Kennedy shirt one time and I was trying to name my band, and which eventually became Chronic Chaos. But, my dad said, why don't you call your band the Dead Shitheads? And I thought he was being kind of like, kind of giving me shit. But he said, no, he said, that's really punk rock and cool. And you'd make a lot of people mad if you were called the Dead Shitheads. So we were almost the Dead Shitheads. So, I want to say thank you, Dad. My dad passed away back in 2005. And he was the biggest supporter of my music and my career. And I know that if he was here now, he would be my co-host on this podcast. So I love you, Dad, if you're up there listening somewhere. But I never got to be in a band called the Dead Shitheads. Maybe that'll happen at some point. So, okay, we're going to move on to number 3 on Scott's list. He has the Brian Jonestown Massacre. I like that quite a bit. And I've got a name on my list that's kind of similar to that. But yeah, I guess, Brian Jonestown Massacre. My wife and I have seen a couple documentaries on the Jonestown Massacre, and it's pretty crazy. But yeah, that name gives you a lot of images, but I haven't checked them out. I need to check them out, but it's, that's a cool band name, the Brian Jonestown Massacre. Okay. On Scott's list, coming in at number 2, he's got NoFX. I mean, how can you beat NoFX? It's iconic. If you like punk rock, you've seen the logo. I always liked back in the day, they released, the sticker pack that had basically the NoFX logo, but the O was like a band that inspired them, like the Subhumans or the Misfits or the Descendants or whatever. And, NoFX is a great band name. And I just remember in different interviews, like I remember El Jefe saying like, it means no effects in our music and like just people trying to, people said No Fucking Straight Edge or whatever, but I don't know. NoFX is a great band name, and I love them, and they're one of my favorites. Moving on to his number 1, he's got Nursery Crimes. I've never heard of Nursery Crimes, but that is a really cool band name. So I'm going to have to check them out when I get off of this computer here. When we get done doing this podcast, I'm going to check out Nursery Crimes. So Scott, thank you so much for sending in your top 5 list. Now, I thought about this for a while, and these aren't like, some of them may be your favorite bands of mine. Some of them are just cool band names that I thought sounded really cool. So I'm just going to go for it. Here we go. So number 5, I'm going to go with Sloan. They're a really cool Canadian band. I named my dog after the band. I have Sloan tattooed on my arm. People always think it's like an ex-girlfriend or something. I'm like, no, that's my dachshund that passed away. And my dachshund was named after a really cool band from Canada called Sloan. So if you haven't checked out Sloan, I recommend Coax Me is probably one of my favorite songs that they do, but they've got so many great songs, and all you guys up in Canada know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about Sloan. So number 5, Sloan. Number 4, I'm going to go with City and Color, another Canadian guy. I think it's cool that his name is Dallas Green. So instead of naming, the Dallas Green Band or the Dallas Green solo project, he went with City and Color because people would say, what's your name? Dallas Green. He goes, like the city and the color, Dallas Green. I always thought that was a really cool kind of way of naming a solo project without, I wouldn't want to be someone that has like, if I did like a solo band, it'd feel weird to me if I went to my gig and I saw somebody wearing a shirt that just said Chris Swinney. It's cooler to have a name, like a couple solo things that I've tried to start up in the past. I had, a band called American Gothic, which was just my solo thing. And then I had a band called The Skeleton Coast, which was just me doing stuff. So I always thought it was a cool dynamic of, it's a solo thing, but you put a name on it as opposed to your name. So that's why I like City and Color. Number 3, I'm going to go with a band that my old band used to play with all the time here in Indiana. They're called In the Face of War. Now, the reason that I picked this is because they used to go by ITFOW, which is ITFOW, In the Face of War. And I always thought that was really cool, and like abbreviations for bands that had long names, because there was that whole time period where all the bands had like, and you will know us by the trail of the dead, blah, 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 like a million words. And I always liked it when they could shorten that to like just a really cool kind of abbreviation. I mean, that one time on tour, I always just refer to it as TOTOT. You've heard me say it a million times. So yeah, In the Face of War. And if you guys can check them out, I mean, they're not really doing anything anymore, but some of the other guys are in different bands. I know that Ben from In the Face of War was doing that band, with Jake, who used to be in the Ataris with me. Jake was on an episode last year of the podcast. So yeah, In the Face of War, or as I like to call them, ITFOW. And then coming in at number 2, Pennywise. Like, they're an amazing band. They're one of my favorite bands. They helped kind of get me into punk rock when I was young. And when I found out about them, I already knew about the Stephen King book, It. So it drew me in before I even knew what they sounded like, because I knew that the clown in that book was called Pennywise. And I think it's funny that there's the only real tie between the two is that they have a song called Pennywise on their first full length that's talking about the clown from that book, but then it stops after that. But yeah, so Pennywise, I always thought that was a really cool band name. And I had the old school green shirt with like the block logo on it, and people at school were like, what is that? Like, just, they had no idea what it was. And I always thought that was really cool. So yeah, number 2, Pennywise. Now, number 1, I could not name a song from this band. I think I've heard them a couple times. I think maybe I saw them live or my old band played with them, but coming from Indiana, I really like this name. And it's kind of like the Brian Jonestown Massacre thing. It's John Cougar Concentration Camp. I always thought that was a great name. Like I said, I know nothing about this band. They could be utter shit. I don't know. Or they might be the most amazing band in the world, but they have a really cool band name, the John Cougar Concentration Camp. So, yeah, go check them out, I guess. And maybe tell me if they're good or not, because I really don't remember. But, living in Indiana, growing up here, John Cougar Mellencamp is one of the celebrity dudes, So, Yeah, John Cougar concentration camp. So that's my top 5. At number 5, Sloan. At number 4, City and Color. Number 3, In the Face of War, or It Foul. Number 2, Pennywise. And number 1, John Cougar concentration camp. So like I said, if you guys have a top 5 list, go ahead and send it to me at any of the social medias. You can hit me up at TOTOT Podcast. You can email me if you want to be a sponsor. If you have a band like Protagonist at the beginning, they're so good. It's the second time they sponsored an episode. You can hit me up, TOTOTpodcast at gmail.com, and we'll figure everything out. If you guys want to leave me a voicemail that could get played on the show, I play them every once in a while. I get some voicemails, pretty regularly, but I mean, I'm not just going to throw shit up. So call me and leave me a really cool one, and it'll probably get on the show. And you can just hit me up on the hotline. It is 1-765-372-8818. So yeah, that's about it. Wherever you listen to your podcasts, subscribe, rate, and review. It really helps us, gain visibility. And I just heard recently, iTunes is going away. I don't know what that means as far as podcasting. I'm pretty sure that the podcast app, since it's its own separate thing, will still exist. So there'll be some way to listen to this on your Apple products. I'm not really sure what yet, but we're always available everywhere else. Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Spotify, whatever. You can always find us everywhere. So that's it. I'm going to jump into my conversation. I haven't even told you who's on the show yet, but I think you probably heard the little blurb at the beginning with Protagonist, the band that sponsored the episode. But I got to sit down with Mr. Vinnie Fiorello from Less Than Jake. He's kind of like the mastermind behind a lot of it. He does a lot of the lyric writing and the producing. He's no longer touring with the band, but he is still in the band, and he's a huge part of why Less Than Jake is as legendary as they are as far as, ska and punk and just rock and roll in general, man. I mean, they toured with Bon Jovi, and we talk all about it in this conversation. So I hope you guys are going to enjoy this, and I will talk to you after the conversation like I always do. But I'm going to jump into it right now. This is my conversation with Mr. Vinnie Fiorello from Less Than Jake. Here we go. And I'm on the line with Vinnie from Less Than Jake. How are you today, Vinnie?
Hey, great, actually. I'm in Gainesville right now, and it's about 92 degrees and sunny, man. So there's not much to complain about.
Yeah, I'm up in Indiana, and it's been kind of cold and rainy, but today it's 75, so it's pretty nice out right now.
Yeah, that's beautiful, actually.
So I tell you what, man, I know you're busy. I want to get right into it. At the top of these podcasts, I like to ask my guests how they got into music, and especially the instrument that they play. So when you were young, growing up in Gainesville, what made you decide that you loved music, and what made you want to play drums?
Well, I'm gonna bring you back because I didn't grow up in Gainesville. I grew up in Woodbridge, New Jersey. Right?
Okay, okay.
That's how come some people. I'm gonna sidebar real quick. Some people go, "How come there's a lot of New Jersey talk? You guys are from Florida. Why is there a lot of New Jersey songs lyrically?" Well, I grew up in New Jersey, so therefore there's a lot of mentions of New Jersey. So, as far as learning how to play drums and why I chose drums and how I chose music. I have a brother that's 4 years older than me, and one Christmas he got a guitar, and I wanted the guitar also. My brother had a moment of early teen crazy and said, "I am playing guitar. You cannot play guitar. You have to pick something else." So I was left with either wanting to know how to play piano or bass or drums, and I picked drums.
Drums always seemed so cool. When I was young, I got a guitar when I was super young, but I had a friend that played drums, and he got really good at the drums. And every time I tried it, I sucked. And I was really into the guitar, but I always wanted to be a drummer. I just couldn't make it happen.
You know what? It's it's everyone has envy of everything else. Drummers, guitar players wanted to be drummers, and there's always a wild sort of ride that goes along with if you're playing your instrument for X amount of time. There's always some, I wish I did this, or I wish I started doing this at early.
So I know that you write a lot of the lyrics, or most of the lyrics, for Less Than Jake. Was that always something you were into as well, like writing?
Absolutely. I mean, even from the first like sort of like aggro punk band that I was in called Needless Guilt, right?
Yeah.
I did lyrics, and it was something in me that was always a good way to exercise how I felt. By nature, I'm an introvert, and uh, have in the past really struggled with like different sort of inner dialogue in my head, negative like sort of outlook on it. And that's one reason why I found punk rock, but uh, why I continued to do lyrics. I just needed something to sort of exercise what I was feeling without being self-destructive or outwardly destructive. So lyrics kind of it helped exercise those demons, and it still does to this day.
What were some of the bands you said you found punk rock? What were some of the bands that got you into the genre?
Well, I have to split it up into two, right?
Okay.
So the early ones, my brother, like I said, he was 4 years older than me. He started to go see uh, some new wave bands and some punk rock bands. Um, so early ones that he liked that I co-opted, Ramones, Clash, Blondie, and found the Misfits being from New Jersey. That was like a given with Sam Hain as well. Uh, Minor Threat. Those were the early ones. Found Dead Kennedys, and all the big punk bands that sort of they kind of hit that checklist of how you're feeling when you first get into punk rock music, right?
Yeah.
But that was his music. It wasn't really my music. So once I started to like kind of dive into more punk rock, I found the East Bay uh, punk rock scene, and that was with Sweet Baby, Isocracy, The Lookout, early Green Day, Sir Trout. I mean, there was a ton of them, and it was mostly from the Lookout Records catalog.
Were you doing like the mail order thing?
Of course, and
Yeah.
I was doing that, but I through Lookout. But I also there was a massive mail order distro from Tucson called Toxic Shock.
I remember that. Yeah.
And Toxic Shock, they would send you a newspaper of like, hey, it's this band and it's this thing, so check it out, And I remember reading Operation Ivy and the explanation of what it was, and it was ex-members of Sewer Trout and other Lookout bands that I liked. And I remember getting the 7-inch, and I remember being blown away by it. And I remember diving so headfirst into Op Ivy that it was insane. But at the same time, Chicago pop punk scene was kind of busting out, and that was Screeching Weasel for sure, and the Vindictives, and that's started to form what I liked and how I wrote music and how the content of that like sort of lyrical thing
Yeah.
was crafted. So it's definitely the roots of the style and the inspiration comes from the East Bay in California and the Chicago pop scene.
So, Less Than Jake is a punk band, rock band, ska band, whatever you want to call it. You guys do have horns. Where did the ska influence come from? What were some of the first bands of that like ilk that you actually found out about and really liked?
Well, you want to know what's weird? It's that the thing that really drove us to add a horn section, really, there was a band from England called Snuff.
Oh, I love Snuff, man. Yeah, they're great.
And it was before they signed to Fat, and no one knew who they were in the States. And I remember getting tape trading with somebody and from Bradenton in Florida. And I remember on one side it was the Doughboys, on the other side was Snuff. And I remember listening to this fast pop punk, and it had this trombone. And I went to Chris. I went, Chris is the guitar player and one of the singers. And I went, dude, we have to do a band, but it has to be like this. And he was like, okay. And I was like, we should add like I said, Op Ivy was a big thing for me, right?
Yeah.
So we should add, some like Op Ivy, and we should add like some like specials vibe to it, and like really combine these things together and see what we could do. I don't know like what it is, and we started to experiment. And early on, it was very much like a Screeching Weasel sort of heavy influence. And then it just dropped into, we're going to add a little ska here. And you got to remember, there was no blueprint for ska punk music.
Yeah.
There were the Boss Tones, but they were more on the rock side. And it wasn't very hyperactive. You had Fishbone and you had Op Ivy, but again, they were a different headspace. What we were going for, we were trying to blend ska music, and we were and blending that with Chicago pop punk or East Bay pop punk.
Yeah, I will say that, you know, I'm a little bit younger than you, not much. I just turned 40. And my first entrance into anything ska at all was you guys in the band Mustard Plug. And when I heard it, I'd always loved reggae, and, you know, ska is kind of just sped up reggae if you want to get technical about it. And when I heard you guys and I heard like the clean upstroke guitar stuff, and then I heard Mustard Plug, it changed me. Like, I was never in a ska band, but I got into a lot of the Lookout stuff. I got into, you know, bands like Hepcat. Like, I got into a lot of bands that I probably wouldn't have heard of if it wasn't for you guys.
That's awesome, you know, and that was the beautiful thing at that point in time, where you could go, well, I like this band. Well, if you like this band, you definitely like this band.
Yeah.
And you kind of dove in on a whim. Well, I heard it, and there was no other way to kind of listen to it. So you either traded with somebody and kind of on a dupe cassette, or you went to the record store and bought it. And I bought a lot of things on a whim that I didn't know what it was, but I had heard that it was similar to some other things. And I went to the record store and I purchased it, and it turned out to be some of huge records for me. Massive record.
I've told this story on the podcast before, but when I was very, very young, from like 7 on, I was into Metallica. My uncle got me a Master of Puppets tape, and I just thought it was kind of like my own little secret. And I always saw the picture of Cliff wearing the Misfits shirt, but it just had the Crimson Ghost. It didn't say the Misfits or anything. So when I was maybe 9 or 10 years old, I went to a record store and I saw the CD that had the Crimson Ghost, and I bought it on a whim. And so I was like a 10-year-old Ken rocking out to the Misfits, and I loved it, man. I've been a fan ever since.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, it's that there's a certain coolness to digital music now, right? So you have Spotify, and you could discover a lot of things off of interest that you're listening to. You have a vast catalog of music at your fingertips, and it's a cool time to be a listener and a lover of music. But back when I first got into punk rock music, it was beautiful, man. Like, you are reading the lyrics, and it's this, you know, this format that you're looking at the thanks list, and the thanks list said these.
And you find out about bands through the thanks list. I found out some of my favorite bands from reading like NoFX albums and different things that they thanked other bands.
100%, man. And that was to me the beautiful thing about a physical product, you know.
Yeah.
Whether CD or cassette or LP, you know, 7-inch.
Now I know that you know, you do paper and plastic. I knew at one point when I was actually in the Ataris a while back. I don't know if this was true or not. Chris said we were talking to paper and plastic about putting something out. Now, you know, do you ever feel like vinyl is going? I know it's made a major comeback, but do you think that physical copies and things like that are going to become more mainstream, or do you think it's just kind of, you know, people that love music and they, you know, obsess over music like you and I do, it's going to get good for that, but not maybe the mainstream people are just going to use Spotify and listen to singles?
Well, I mean, that's what happens now. I think that 2008 to, you know, maybe a few years ago, there was this vinyl bubble where it didn't matter who the band was. If you released something on vinyl, someone would be like, "Ooh, vinyl, let me buy it," you know? And that bubble definitely burst. I think that more and more people, the ease of digital music wins out on anything. Of course, you're a fan, you want to own, to have that ownership. But I find that most people these days are not really worried about the ownership side of music. They're into the listening side of it more than the owning side of it. And that's what digital music is. It's, you have this massive amount of ones and zeros that are at your disposal, and you go, yeah, you know, I don't know who Billie Eilish is, but I can find out real quick and listen to, you know, her new record.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk to you about the forming, since, we're talking about all this future stuff. Let's go back to, in my mind, a better time in music. You guys formed in 1992. What was the way that you guys met? Did you guys all know each other?
I knew Chris from high school, and that was down in Port Charlotte. Chris moved up to the University of Florida in Gainesville, 3 hours north. And he used to come home. We were in, punk bands before together in high school. He left and he would come home on the weekends sometimes. And we just started jamming and started writing songs. And we wound up doing a demo under the name Less Than Jake. And probably about half a year after he started coming home, I moved up to Gainesville and I started to go to college there.
What were you studying in college?
Special education.
Okay, cool.
So we wound up, just continuing the band and found Rod. We had another bass player. He left. Raj came in as a guitar player, but he said, "Oh yeah, I'll learn how to play bass." And I mean, he's such a gnarly bass player, dude. It's crazy, right? So it's like, but he, cut his teeth on being a guitar player first and foremost in the high school, and then, we met through one of Chris's roommates. Met through just a Chris's roommate as a friend. That's it. It's crazy.
So you no, keep going. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
I was just saying that, once you're sort of in that, and then you start to, as the band idea started to form about what it was, you added more horns, and some horn players would leave, and then others would stay and continue, and you'd get more, and it is what it is today, and it's been a pretty solid lineup of everybody for 18 years or whatever it's been.
Yeah, I do a lot of research before these interviews, and normally Wikipedia is kind of the go-to place. And I think it said there'd only been maybe 3 or 4 ex-members. So I mean, in the 27, 28 years you guys have been together, that's stellar, man.
Yeah, it's great. It's definitely a very wild ride, because early on we were like kind of switching people out and trying other people for a little bit, and then they would leave. So like I said, it's been, a really, for the last 18-ish, 19 years, the same lineup.
So you guys, you said that you did a demo, Pezcore, which is the debut full length, came out in 1995. It was like on Dill Records and Asian Man. Was it the same release, or did it go to Asian Man later?
Well, it was, Mike Park was part of Dill, and he was in Skank and Pickle at the time. And when he left Skank and Pickle, he said, "Hey, I'm going to start my own record label," and that was Asian Man. So it was the same release, just second record label. It was just we followed Mike Park to his something new. So.
What was the process of meeting Mike? Did you guys play a show with Skank and Pickle and he liked the demo right away? How did you guys get hooked up with him?
Well, it was, we played plenty of shows with Skank and Pickle. And then he started the Misfits of Ska compilation, and he had asked us to be on it. And that just started, a friendship, and the relationship was, "Hey, what are you guys doing for this?" And you got to remember, even though it was our debut record, we had so many releases prior to Pezcore, so many 7-inches, so we were fairly seasoned before and fairly known as far as a band that had released a bunch of music and had a bunch of reviews, and we're kind of riding a new wave of kind of in the punk scene. So for a while during that time, we felt like outsiders, even though we were on one of the more respected punk labels, No Idea Records at the time. We still felt kind of at a place in the punk scene, and with Mike Park, he embraced us for who we were and he could see what was coming in the future. So it was awesome.
No Ideas right there in Gainesville, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, yeah, and I know Small Brown Bike. I'm trying to think of all the bands I listened to on No Idea back in the day.
Hot Water Music.
Hot Water Music, hell yeah, man. Were you guys tight with those guys?
We still know at the time. you know, we were friendly, but I mean, since they've been around forever, we know those guys really well now.
It's kind of crazy. Like I've got a little outline here. I want to go on a tangent though. Like the amount of good music and just kind of counterculture stuff that came out of Gainesville. Is there? I have a or not a fan question, listener question, which I normally do at the end, but I'm going to bring it up right now. Julian from Canada, he wanted to know how coming up in the Gainesville scene was for the band, and how did it like affect the band and your ideals?
Well, it really, Gainesville scene showed us that you can do everything yourself and still be a successful band, right? So
Yeah.
we, for a lot of tours and a lot of shows, we booked them ourselves, and we would come home from tour and we would screen a bunch of T-shirts, and we were doing our own merch, and it was wild doing mail order at the same time. I mean, we joke and went that we could have easily been arrested for mail fraud at any point in time.
Yeah.
Like, because, we would get a ton of mail and a ton of orders, and we'd be on tour, and it would be weeks until we would get back from tour. Then we would have to go right into mail order and get everyone's orders together and then send them out. And we did that same process over and over and over again, right? Like, it was crazy. So Gainesville, a very do-it-yourself type of scene. It taught us that, to be hands-on in every component possible, and which we were, which we still are. And to be honest, it forced us to try harder, because we were met with a lot of resistance locally for playing ska music.
Yeah.
So it made us pushed ourselves to get out of Gainesville, to go and break away from the Gainesville scene, because it wasn't embracing who we were, So you had Less Than Jake shows in Gainesville, and then you had Gainesville punk scene shows in Gainesville, and it was decidedly two separate entities, So we were bringing a whole new vibe and new blood to what Gainesville was what was going on and what was happening.
So you guys, the thing that I'm interested in, the jump after PezCorps in 95, you guys signed to Capitol. Now I know, bands all the time go from indie labels to major labels, but what was the courtship like with Capitol, and how did that all come about?
All of a sudden we had this fucking crazy dude show up, like full of manic energy. His name was Craig Aronson. And sometimes he would have this guy, Lauren Israel, with him that was like a scout. Other times he would just show up by himself. And dude would show up at random times on like some tours and just talk a mile a minute and about like he works at Capitol now and he wants to do this. And we were like, dude, whatever, man. Like, we're out here, we're doing whatever. And he was tenacious about it, man. His tenacity for wanting to work together was like, well, fuck, man. Like, here's this guy. He keeps on coming around. It could be our like moment to be able to go above and beyond preaching to the choir, so to speak. It's like the punk music, people who like punk music already knew who Less Than Jake was and already decided, yes, I like Less Than Jake, or no, I do not like Less Than Jake. So going to Capitol, it was a moment where we could branch out of the punk scene and try to reach other people from all different walks. And it doesn't really have to do with it now, but back then distribution was everything.
Oh yeah,
right?
definitely. Yeah.
Now Spotify's everywhere and distribution is no secret, right? But back then you needed someone who could get you in every store, whether it be an independent record store or a chain store like Tower Records or FYE or whatever, right? So for me, it was a no-brainer to go to Capitol because they have the distribution that could get us in every single store in every single city. So let's do this.
What was there, you said people in the punk scene, liked you or didn't like you, they'd already made up their mind. And I know that when bands sign to majors, there's normally some blowback. Was there a lot of, issues with fans kind of being upset?
Oh, there was very minimal blowback at the time, and that was because you either had people who were like, "I like the band, so it doesn't matter where they are," or "I don't like the band, so I really don't care where it is." It wasn't this like, it wasn't, well, here's the poster boys for punk rock music, and now they're going to a multinational corporation, and this is everything they stood for, and it's against everything they stood for and everything they said. I mean, we never said anything like that. We just said, hey, we like to party and we like to have a good time and we like fucking pop punk and ska. So, like, come on out, roll out and do the show and do whatever, right? Like,
Yeah.
And we didn't base our whole existence on any genre, and we never based our existence on any scene, and we were just less than Jake, right? Like, and that's how we kind of viewed it.
Well, I mean, you guys put out a record that my friends and I used to listen to all the time. It was the Greased EP with all the songs from the Grease soundtrack.
Oh yeah.
I mean, this is way down in my notes, but I'm very interested because I used to listen to it all the time. I'm sure there was probably some issues getting the rights. I think at one point, like didn't they re-release it or something? Like was there an issue when you guys wanted to put that out?
You know what? It's kind of crazy because that was another like sort of weird mail order thing where we're like, hey, we're going to do a Slayer cover 7-inch, and we didn't even have anything recorded. And then, hey, we're going to do the Grease soundtrack. And we had that on our little like sort of form flyer that this was coming soon. This is coming soon. And there was a point where we're like, well, man, we've said for like a year that the Grease soundtrack is coming soon. I guess we're going to have to learn the songs and record it now. Like, we said it, like, so we have to do it. And we went in one day and recorded some demos for some upcoming music. And we did the Slayer record and the Slayer 7-inch, and we did the Grease soundtrack. And we really didn't worry about the copyright. We thought, hey, this is going to be under the radar. No one's going to care about it. We're going to put it out, and then it's going to be over with.
Yeah.
And it still exists in some way, shape, or form today still, right? But
I own it. I own a physical copy.
But it was done so casually and so like fun and in the spirit of what it was that like it was just cool. It was just cool to do it, man. Like, and it kind of blew my mind that after the fact that, oh, we just did this and this is crazy. But at the time, that's what we were going for. We were going for, let's put out these fun releases and we're going to put it on vinyl, whether it's a cheese-shaped record or whether it's a vinyl record that's packaged in a pizza box, or whether it's a Grease soundtrack or a Megadeth split. We just wanted to do what was fun and what was in the spirit of who the band was.
Yeah.
Which was, we're here to sort of bridge a lot of gaps and have a lot of fun in that meantime, right?
Do you own like every release you guys have put out? Because I know there's a lot of collectors out there. I've done some research, and there was an Instagram account where they post like a different Less Than Jake vinyl release every day.
Yeah, I own every record, every variation, and in some cases multiple copies of that variation.
That's awesome. I always wondered that because some bands like we were talking about Hot Water Music, Gainesville band. They, the guy, bass player for Silverstein, Billy, he has like an insane, like 2,000 piece Hot Water Music vinyl collection. And I always wondered if like Chuck and those guys have all of those records, or if they even, you know what I mean? Like if they're collectors.
Yeah, it's crazy. I am a big vinyl collector anyway. And, I'm just a Less Than Jake, like merch person. You know what I mean? Like I have, anything that we've done, I have it. And sometimes the only reason why I wouldn't have it is that someone lost it, or a fan, this guy had hit me up, and when my house had burnt down and I lost my copy of a picture disc of Hello Rockview, it was put out by Drive Through do you have any more? I'm like, dude, are you kidding me? It's like, that was a decade ago. I don't have that. And I think he's like, well, like, and gave me the reason why it meant so much. And it really kind of went, here's a fan, man. Like, and this is means so much that I just took out of my collection and sent it to him, because it means more to that dude than it does sitting in a closet or now a storage space,
Well, I think that says a lot about you, man. Like, everybody kind of likes to keep their accolades around the house. Like, the small amount of success that I've had in the music industry, I've got things hanging on the wall and everything. But yeah, if somebody wanted it and it was going to actually serve a purpose more than collecting dust in my room, I think I'd probably do the same thing.
Absolutely, man. I mean, weird that when about 6 years ago, when I moved into my new place, I took almost everything out that I've done and created and put it other places, just so when I go home, there's like a clean slate and I'm not sort of staring at it, thinking about the past,
Yeah.
like, and making me think about the future. And I wanted that, because for so long I was surrounded by, because I do toys, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Surrounded by 250 toys and thousands of records. And I just needed that moment of, okay, I don't need to have all this stuff reminding me about what I did, know what I did. Let me pull it to somewhere else, So I have a tattoo shop in Gainesville. That's where my toys are at. They're part, I have, I put a lot of my Les and J memorabilia. It's in a storage space, and it's safe and it's awesome there. And my daughter will love it. And one day, I occasionally go through it,
Yeah.
and I'm like, damn, we've done a lot of cool shit, and it's awesome.
My wife always gives me shit. She's like, when I walk into your little, because I have a little like podcast studio where I'm like, I have instruments and everything, and she's like, when I walk in, it's like a shrine to your life. I'm like, yeah, I know, but it's my little piece of heaven. It's where I put all my stuff.
Absolutely, man, and I get that. And for the longest time, I was with you 100% on it, and then I started to like dwell too much on what was and not enough on what is.
Yeah.
And I needed to make a break with that.
Well, as my kids are getting older, they're taking over spots in my studio, so I'm getting ready to probably store a lot of stuff.
Yeah, man, totally.
When you're a dad, it's got the kids come first. My old memorabilia from my life can go sit in the closet somewhere.
Dude, I'm with you on that, and I understand. I'm a dad of a 7-year-old daughter, and sometimes I have this, like, I just did a monkey assassin. It's one of the characters that I've done in the past, and Funko released that monkey assassin as a pop, and I got it, and as soon as I'm opening the box and I'm looking at it, and my daughter like walks behind me and is like, "Ooh, can I have that?" I'm like, "Yeah, go ahead, here, take it."
Yeah, I know it's weird. Like I have that issue all the time. Like I'll be doing something or I'll be, I don't even know, even my phone, I'll be looking and my son will come up and go, "Can I look at your phone?" Like, yeah, here it is. Like, it's just,
Exactly.
they can do whatever they want, man. They're the best. So
Agreed.
So I'm very interested in this, and I hopefully you'll have something cool to say about it. I just had Lindsay from Frenzel Rom on the program a while back, and he told me that their first tour of the States was the Race Around Uranus tour with you guys in Blink 182 back in '97. And he told me that I should ask you about that tour because he said you probably had some good things to say about it.
It's one of those things where it was us and Blink. Frenzel was opening, and it was right when Blink started to kind of like creep up the radio aspect of it. And dude, Frenzel, I'd never met any band that partied harder than Frenzel Rom.
Yeah. Lindsay had some good stories, man.
And I couldn't believe it, man. I couldn't believe how hard they partied and how awesome they were, but how like sort of like weirdly precise they are musically, but how much of like sort of like don't give a fuck off stage, and like kind of like super sarcastic and like razor sharp wit, man. It was awesome.
Yeah. Is there any like good little tidbits, any tour stories you could tell about that run?
You know what? The run that run was good, and I don't have a lot of memories with that. I do have memories though of being on tour with Frenzel Rom in Australia, and just Jay taking a bunch of ecstasy and being out of his mind, man. Like, and I at a certain point, I just was like, I can't believe that here I'm sitting across from this dude, and he like took like like a handful of ecstasy and like riding it out, So, uh, you know what? It's for me like tour stories always are kind of like a throwback to it, but so with Frenzel Rom specifically, man, like we have a song called basically Jay Frenzel, right? And it's about Jay Frenzel taking a 2x4 to the side of our bus on Warped Tour during a Warped Tour, and the whole thing that unfolded. So if you're listening to this and you want to know the story and the best tour story, well, it's set to music and it's called Jay Frenzel. It was on our B-side record called B is for B-side, and you could check it out.
Awesome, man. Well, speaking of touring, there was something that I remember when I found out about this, I thought it was pretty crazy. It was back in 2000, you guys got tapped to open for Bon Jovi. How did that come about?
You know what? It was crazy because there was a certain point where Bon Jovi hadn't been in the public eye for a very, very, very long time. They had recorded the Crush record, and it hadn't gone to radio yet. So they were planning, a comeback tour, and they were going, okay, we want a young band and figure it out. And they approached, Eve 6, and they approached SR-71 and a bunch of other bands, and they were like, fuck no, we're not going to open up for Bon Jovi. We're on the radio, man. Like, we're fucking big shit. Bon Jovi, who's that? Like, whatever, right? And as metalheads, I mean, dude, Chris DeMakes is a monster when it comes to metal knowledge. It's crazy. Yeah. He's like a fucking mutant, right? When it comes to that.
There was a night on one Warped Tour when I met him, and I think we talked about Iron Maiden and Metallica for like 4 hours after the barbecue.
Dude, 100%. He's a fucking mutant with that, right? So, yeah. Dude, when we were given the opportunity, hey, like, would you guys, maybe you want to tour Bon Jovi? We were like, sign us up, deal's done. And that, dude, we were immediately, it wasn't how much are we going to get paid or what's going to happen or what. We were like, yeah, we'll definitely do it. Sign us up for it.
What was it, like stadiums, or like, was it, since it was a comeback tour, I mean, was it still big?
It was arenas.
Okay.
Right. So, but still, dude, that's, 13 to 21,000 people sold out every night. It was crazy.
What was the response like from the crowd?
I mean, dude, they were showing up in the middle of our set, there was people that were there, obviously, but, we were entrance music, but there's some people that were there, and to this day, I still see some people that knew us, got to know us by that Bon Jovi tour, right?
That's awesome.
And it was crazy because some people were like, who are these lunatics that are on stage right now? Chris would be dressed up in like some like kind of weird getup, and we would just go, we would go out there and play 30 minutes, and then 30 minutes set up for Bon Jovi. Then Bon Jovi would come out and play for like 2.5 hours. All the hits and all the new hits and all the old hits. It was awesome.
So when you guys are approaching a tour like that, I want to ask about just in general anyway, but when you're approaching a tour like that, where maybe, you're trying to put your best foot forward, I guess, because those people maybe are more mainstream, whatever. Is it hard to choose a set list, especially for 30 minutes?
Dude, at that time, there was no like kinder, gentler, less than Jake. It was still very fast and very aggressive. So, and especially compared to Bon Jovi. So, dude, it didn't matter if we did all of our slow songs. Yeah. It'd still be 3 times faster and 1,000,000 times angrier, even in our happiest moment, than Bon Jovi song, right?
Yeah, yeah. So in general, like nowadays, like being a band as long as you guys have and having, as many releases and as many songs as you guys have, Is there a process that you can tell me about in picking a set list?
You know what? It's really whoever wants to take up the reign and push for a song. That's how it usually was in the past, like, so uh it was finding a song that everyone could agree on and kind of going, okay, everyone else, okay, cool, and then uh throw another song out, and then it would be like, I don't want to play it, I want to play it, I don't want to play it, and then okay, we won't play it, and then move on to it. So you have your standards that you have to play, and then you try to push in other tunes that make diehards and happy,
Yeah.
and make yourself happy at the same time.
Are there any songs that like you guys would pull out that you hadn't played for a long time? Like, do you guys, you know what I mean? Like when, like, I'll just use Metallica as like an example. They have their tuning room. So sometimes they'll just surprise the crowd with some rare song from back in the day. Did you guys have like a list of songs that everyone knew and it was pretty tight? Or can you just play anything from the catalog whenever you want?
You know what? It all depends on what time period you're talking about, because there was a moment where we could play the complete catalog, because we relearned the complete catalog in 2006 for 6 record shows. So, dude, like, we could play this song. Okay, we could totally play that plus the B-sides, right?
Yeah.
So we had it down, and then you start to go like anything, and I'm guilty of it more so than whoever. It's like, dude, I just want to go out there and play the songs people are stoked on. I don't want to go out there and play a song that 5 people are stoked on and 745 people don't fucking know.
Yeah, totally, man.
And people have different headspaces about that, and that was always my headspace. Right or wrong, I don't fucking know, but like, I always went, I just want the A's. Don't give me anything, but just go out there and like clobber them with all the A sides.
So with you guys being a band for as long as you have, it's almost like a generational thing. I'm sure that you probably are now seeing, 3 generations of Less Than Jake fans. You've got like grandfathers and fathers and mothers and sons and daughters. I mean, is it crazy to think that you guys are still doing this far in?
No, I mean, and to be as transparent as possible as a dad, right? Like, I never thought that I would be a dad and still be in a band.
Yeah.
I never thought that. It's weird to see somebody that was around in 1996 who now is bringing their kid to the show.
Yeah.
It's excuse me, it's super cool, but at the same time, it's super weird, man.
It's got to be weird, man. So, let me see, where was I at? Your relationship with Fat Records. That's the, like, kind of the big thing with me. Like, I know Mike and all those guys. Did you guys play shows with them? How did that relationship start back in the day?
You know what? It started because we needed a home to go to after we were in the middle of recording Borders and Boundaries for Capitol Records. Capitol Records had a new president that came in, and he basically said, hey, we could release this record, and I'm not really going to do much because it's not really the type of music that we want to do anything with going forward. Or you could take the record paid for and you could go do whatever with it. And we went, okay, we'll take the record, and then Fat had to pay like some money for the recording or whatever it is. I don't recall the price, but we jumped at it. Well, like, why be somewhere on a major where like no one's really like gives a shit?
Yeah.
And Fat went, yeah, man, we totally want to do this. And we never played a show with No Effects prior to that. I never met Mike. We did some like Warped Tours and things like that, but it wasn't like we were great friends.
So they actually just, like, when you say they gave you the recording, they already paid for it, they gave you the rights to the masters and everything?
Yeah.
Dude, that's insane.
Yeah.
I mean, publishing and masters, like that's where it's at. And I mean, that's a big record. That record's amazing. So that's great that you guys got that. That's crazy.
Dude, but go with this. If we stayed around on Capitol, they would have had to spend another $400,000 going to radio.
Yeah.
And why do that? It's on a punk, on a punk band, punk ska band. They saw it as, dude, we're stoked. We don't have to spend that money. Take the record.
Well, that's awesome. Okay, so I've had you on the phone for quite a while. I have a couple listener questions, and I'm going to let you be on your way. So
Sure.
Bob from California, and I knew this was going to come up, so I saved it for the listener questions. Bob from California wants to know, is the band really named after your parrot?
The dog that I had was named Jake. It was an English bulldog.
Okay.
That dog was treated better than anyone else in my entire family. My parents would make specific meals for that dog, like making steaks for the dog. The dog had a place on the couch that no one else was allowed to sit. That dog's name was Jake, and everything in my house was less than Jake. That's where that came from.
I don't know where he got parrot from. Maybe it says parrot online. I'm not sure. But
Yeah.
So it was a dog. So
English bulldog.
So
English
Bob
bulldog.
from California, it wasn't a parrot, it was a dog. Okay.
Yeah.
So Frank from Delaware wants to know why you decided to step away from touring back in 2018.
Well, we're discussing the reason why, really. I mean,
Yeah, right.
I have a daughter that's 7. I've been on the road since she has been born, 6 months a year away. And while I was gone last summer, she was diagnosed with dyslexia. And I felt that from being in the background of special education and just being gone so much, man, I felt that I needed to step up to the plate and be a different parent to my daughter, and really kind of embrace fatherhood unlike I have been, and I haven't been a bad father by any means, right? Like always an attentive dad and no matter what, supportive. But I wanted to be a different type of dad. I wanted to be present. I wanted to be here for everything. I wanted to be here for every holiday and every birthday. And I didn't want to have that connection on FaceTime.
Yeah.
I wanted to be here and be present and help her get over, a reading disability, and be around for the victories, man, and be around for the defeats. Being gone all the time and then coming home and then rushing around to get everything else done, I couldn't do that, man. And it was hard because it's choosing between the things that you love most in the world.
Yeah.
So thankfully, saying that to everybody in the band and kind of, explaining what's up and trying to figure out how to go forward without sort of that, me on the drums on tour. It's been good and it's been positive, and I'm glad because it's hard to be home knowing that the thing that you were part of pushes forward, like especially because of the lyrics,
Yeah. I mean, I think that would be hard because like you are the primary songwriter as far as lyrics and whatnot, and you're a big force in that band. You've been there since day one, so it's got to kind of be this weird thing where you're home with your kid, you're doing what you need to do to be a good dad, but they're out there. Like right now, they're in Europe, correct?
Yeah, there's Switzerland, and it's crazy because I do the social media for the band. So, I post everything and I know where they are and I see videos every night and like it's like I'm there in fucking spirit, man. And that's the only thing that I could say. It's like the songs that I had part of in the 27 years of musical input, that shit lives on forever, man. And it's living on in Switzerland tonight, man. And without me, but still with me. And
I mean,
That's beautiful.
I think that's a great situation. A lot of people, like one of the reasons I'm not on tour right now is because I have a couple kids, and then I felt like it wasn't my place. And plus being away from my kids just doesn't work. Like I just can't do it. So I think it's such a cool thing that your bandmates understood where you were coming from, and you get to be home and be the dad, but then you also get to be a part of this huge thing that you guys built and created over the years.
Yeah, I forget, when you were saying that, it just dawned on me. It's like, it's about the moms though too. It's that every time I would leave on tour, my wife essentially became a single mom.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
And it's it became really evident to me that, like, I've been married before. This is my second marriage, and not to get into like my like bullshit, right? But like, dude, I want to be the guy that's present. It's just I happen to be married to music
Yeah.
before, and I'm still married to music. I just have to take this moment of my life and be present in the people I love's life, and because I've been overly present in my other love, which is less than Jake.
Yeah, I think that's great, man, and a lot of respect for doing that, because, like I said, I'm a father as well, and I mean, even being gone for a day or two, I feel weird not seeing my kids, you know.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough, and dude, you know what? It's like, and what I'm saying and what I do is not necessarily, shining a light on other people that are touring that are dads,
Yeah,
because people do that and can balance that, no problem, And dude, I balanced it for 7 years, right?
yeah,
Uh, but it just came. There was a lot going on at this one moment, and I went, this pull away needs to happen for this foreseeable future.
well, I just think it's great that you guys are, so close and such good friends. They're like, yeah, man, do what you got to do, and we're gonna soldier on. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, because their love is less than Jake. Like, that's the whole thing. It's like, it's very odd, man, because you build something and then you have to keep it going. The engine still has to be, tuned up, and the gas has to be poured in the car, and it has to be pushed on, man. And like, it's awesome, man, that's still happening, and I wish that I be in Switzerland tonight, man. I'll be honest with you. But at the same time, I'm going to go in 2 minutes. I'm going to go watch my daughter in her first swim lesson. So uh, I wouldn't have been home for that. So it's a balance, and it's sacrifice on both sides. I applaud people who could be away, and I applaud people who can stay and be a part too. Nothing's the only thing that's right. It's what's right for me, not what's right for anybody else or what's wrong for anybody else.
Yeah, that's cool, man. Well, I tell you what, I got one more listener question. We're gonna end it on a upper a higher note. So Andy from Wisconsin wants to know, out of all the festivals you've played in the world, do you have a favorite?
My favorite was the Reading Festival, and right outside of London.
Yeah.
The first time that we were on a massive festival was the first time that we were on a main stage. It was a moment that's videotaped, which is crazy that could happen. But there's 90,000 people there, and 25,000 people jumping and going fucking apeshit in the middle of Gainesville, Rock City, right?
Yeah, that's awesome.
And it stays and will stay with me for the rest of my life, how amazing that was. And it was just a moment, man, that can never be replaced.
That's awesome, man. Well, what is coming up in the future, not only for the band, but as well as you? I know you have a lot of irons in the fire. You said you've got the tattoo shop. I know you make the toys. Is Paper and Plastic doing anything right now?
Paper and Plastic, yeah, man. I mean, that's what I do the toys under. It's called Wonderland War as well. But I just actually, over the week of this past weekend, dropped 2 toys. They both sold out. One of them was a margarita colorway of the science guy. And then the other one was a clear skull Yoda influence for May the 4th,
Awesome,
on May the
man.
4th. Yeah.
Awesome.
So then I have a few records that are coming out. Actually, summer and fall are the busy times for Paper and Plastic. So I have 4 LPs coming out for different bands and a few EPs. So actually, it's weird. It's kind of getting ready to start announcing them. So I don't want to give too much away, but Smart Bomb being one of the bands, I'm going to release EP for After the Fall, Postage, Divided Heaven EP, Westbound Train. I mean,
Divided Heaven's actually been a sponsor on this show. They're awesome, man.
Yeah, lots of very cool and lots of very fun records that are coming up between now and November.
Cool. Any word on any new Less Than Jake stuff coming out?
I think it's, if I am hearing correctly, November will be like Woodshed and like some like demo / studio time. So I would think early next year.
Cool. That sounds great, man. Well, what are your socials, your web presence, so my listeners can check everything out?
Well, Less Than Jake everywhere, basically. For the band and the dudes. For me, it's Wonderland War. That's WUNDERLANDWAR. That's Wonderland War on Instagram, and it's Less Than Vinnie Twitter. And you can kind of check what I'm doing. I'm really active on Instagram, so I would go there and kind of check out the toys that I'm doing and some of the weirder things that I've been getting myself into.
Awesome. Well, hey, man, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the show. And when that new record comes out, you got to come back and talk to us again, okay?
Absolutely, man. Thank you for having me.
Yep. Have fun at the swim lesson, man.
Thanks, brother.
Talk to you later. Bye. So there it was, my conversation with Mr. Vinnie Fiorello of Less Than Jake. I had a wonderful time speaking with Vinnie, and hopefully in the future when Less Than Jake releases a new record, or he's got some new stuff going on at Paper and Plastic or whatever, we'll get him back on for a part 2. I want to make sure that you guys are supporting all of Vinnie's endeavors. He's making toys. He's releasing records by bands. He's doing so much cool stuff. So go check all of that out. And that's it. I'm going to jump out of here, man. It's been a good episode, and I'm ready to go to sleep. I have to go to work tomorrow and teach the kiddies some guitar. But segueing from that, speaking of teaching guitar, I'm getting ready to start my annual, I guess is a better way to put it, Rock and Roll Summer Camp 2K19. It starts Monday, the 17th, and it goes for the entire week. And then we have a big concert for the kids. And it's great every year. I'm really, really into music education. I teach guitar and banjo and mandolin and everything all week anyway. But this is my kind of like my workshop, and we put bands together, and we have a really good time. And there's an episode way back from last year where I interviewed some of the kids, and I think I'm probably going to do that again. So yeah, you're going to be hearing an episode from Rock and Roll Summer Camp 2K19. I also have a GoFundMe page, which I'm probably going to share on our social media. We are collecting funds for a scholarship because we do this like through a nonprofit. And sometimes, even though it's a nonprofit and there's financial aid, some kids that want to come, they can't afford the tuition to come to the camp. And I've started a little scholarship thing to help get, any kid that wants to learn about music or wants to come to the camp should be able to do it. So I'm going to share that on social media. And if you guys feel inclined to help out a bit, $5, $2, 50 cents, whatever you got, it helps. And it's going to go straight to Rock and Roll Summer Camp, straight to the scholarship fund to help some kids come to camp that maybe couldn't afford to come to camp. So thank you guys so much for everything, supporting the podcast, supporting me and everything that I'm doing. And I really appreciate it. And I love you guys and girls. So yeah, I'm going to get out of here, but not before I play a really cool Less Than Jake song. Now, it was hard for me to pick a song, but I wanted to pick something that kind of encapsulated like everything they're about. It's got a little bit of ska, it's got the horns, it's got some rock, it's got some punk, it's got some, anthemic chorus. It's got everything. It is Gainesville Rock City, which, you know, it's a shout out to where they started, Gainesville. And there's so many great bands out of Gainesville. We talked about it in the conversation. You got Hot Water Music, Against Me. It blows my mind the amount of talent and just like some of my favorite bands that come out of a little town in Florida. So, yeah, Gainesville Rock City. It was on Borders and Boundaries, which came out in 2000 on Fat Records. I mean, we talk about Fat Records all the time on this show. I think it's a running theme that I like a lot of Fat Records bands. But, yeah, we're going to get out of here, but I'm going to play Gainesville Rock City. Love you guys. Thanks for the support. Go tell a friend. Let's get some people excited about music. Let's do this together, man. And if you've got, you know, a band and you want to tell me what you're up to, I'm not even asking you to sponsor an episode. Just hit me up, tototpodcast@gmail.com. Let me know where you're playing. Maybe I'll talk about your dates on the show or something. This show is about my love for music and wanting to share it with you guys. And there's so many hardworking bands out there. The bands that sponsor these episodes and help me keep the show going, they're out there on the battle lines, man. They're out there just busting their ass trying to make it in an industry that kind of tells you at the beginning, you're never going to make it. But that doesn't matter, because when you love music so much, you just push through and no one's going to tell you. And I'm not talking about those people on American Idol that can't sing and their families tell them they can sing. I'm talking about you're in a band and you do it for you, man. And your love of music and the passion. That's why I always did it. I'm not the best guitar player. I'm not the best songwriter. I just busted my ass and put myself in the right situation, and I had a little tiny bit of success. There's a lot better people out there than me that never get any success, but I think it's about hard work and putting yourself in situations to where you can get to that next level. So all you bands out there that are busting your ass touring and just, you know, making it happen, I respect the hell out of you guys and girls. And I just, you know, I'm glad you listened to this podcast. So hit me up, you know, leave me a voicemail, whatever. Let me know what your band's up to. I want to know. And if you come through Indiana, I want to hang out with you. Maybe I'll talk to you and get you on the show. I have an unsigned band episode coming soon. I've been trying to put together. So, yeah, I'm all about the unsigned bands on this show. So hit me up and let me know. But I'm done talking. So here it is. Gainesville Rock City by Less Than Jake. I will see you guys next week. And I'm going to leave the guest as a surprise. But see you next week. Chris, out.
On the truck stop hallway door, it's looking worn and I can hardly read it anymore. I feel like I'm a speck thrown on the map, and I can't help my urge to laugh. I never used to feel like that. Well, I'm half awake and half a world away. All my past mistakes and every misspent day, I wouldn't have it any other way. Try through my haze and half-shut eyes to count up all the reasons why
Hey, this is Dewey Halpus, host of the Peer Pleasure Podcast, part of the Jabberjaw Media Podcast Network. The Peer Pleasure Podcast is an arts and culture podcast. Join me as I discuss life and content with your favorite performers, artists, and creatives. From Fall Out Boy to Slayer, there's something for everyone. Listen and subscribe at jabberjawmedia.com.
This is the Jabberjaw Podcast Network.